Reading from the book of Ezra, chapter 10, verses 1 to 8. While Ezra prayed and made confession, weeping and casting himself down before the house of God, a very great assembly of men, women, and children gathered to him out of Israel, for the people wept bitterly. And Shechaniah, the son of Jehiel of the sons of Elam, addressed Ezra. We have broken faith with our God and have married foreign women from the peoples of the land. But even now there is hope for Israel in spite of this. Therefore, let us make a covenant with our God to put away all these wives and their children, according to the counsel of my Lord and of those who tremble at the commandment of our God. And let it be done according to the law. Arise, for it is your task, and we are with you. Be strong and do it. Then Ezra arose and made the leading priests and Levites and all Israel take an oath that they would do as had been said. So they took the oath. Then Ezra withdrew from before the house of God and went to the chamber of Jehohanan, the son of Eliashib, where he spent the night, neither eating bread nor drinking water, for he was mourning over the faithlessness of the exiles. And a proclamation was made throughout Judah and Jerusalem to all the returning exiles, that they should assemble at Jerusalem, and that if anyone did not come within 3 days by order of the officials and the elders, all his property should be forfeited, and he himself banned from the congregation of the exiles. There is a story of a young businessman who was offered a deal that could make him a millionaire overnight. The catch? He had to manipulate figures, deceive investors, and betray his long-standing partners. Blinded by greed, he rationalized his actions and convinced himself that it was just a small compromise. The deal went through, and for a time he lived in luxury. But within a few years, the truth came out. His company collapsed, his reputation was ruined, and he lost everything: his wealth, his friends, and even his family. Faithlessness has consequences. The people of Israel learned this painful lesson in Ezra chapter 10. When Ezra, their spiritual leader, saw their unfaithfulness, he did not react with anger or mere disappointment. He was utterly broken. He wept bitterly, casting himself down before the house of God. His grief was not personal, but national. The people had forsaken the Lord's commandments by marrying pagan wives. This was not just cultural integration, it was spiritual adultery. Their marriages to idol worshippers meant they did not value their relationship with the only true God. They themselves were at risk of turning away from God in their hearts. Israel would again set foot on the path that had resulted in the devastation of their land and their long exile. To fully grasp the depth of their faithlessness, we must turn to the prophet Malachi, who prophesied during this time. In Malachi chapter 2, verses 10 to 16, he rebukes the people. Have we not all one Father? Has not one God created us? Why then are we faithless to one another, profaning the covenant of our fathers? Judah has been faithless, and abomination has been committed in Israel and in Jerusalem. For Judah has profaned the sanctuary of the Lord, which he loves, and has married the daughter of a foreign god. The Lord was witness between you and the wife of your youth, to whom you have been faithless, though she is your companion and your wife by covenant. The issue was twofold. Not only had these men married foreign women who worshipped idols, but many of them had also divorced their Israelite wives to do so. They broke their covenant with their spouses, and in doing so, violated their covenant with God. Even some of the priests and Levites had entered into such marriages. This was not a sin of ignorance. They knew what they were doing. It was deliberate, willful disobedience, as shown by the sacrifice of a ram, the offering for a trespass, rather than a sin of ignorance. Amidst this crisis, a man named Shekinah stepped forward with the only possible way out. He promised that all those in Israel who had married pagan wives should put them away according to the law. Ezra arose and made the leading priests, Levites, and all of Israel take an oath to do so. Yet he himself could neither eat nor drink that night in his sorrow over Israel's unfaithfulness. The resulting events prove that the Israelites did not react hastily or emotionally. All the people who had sinned in this matter gathered at Jerusalem within 3 days, despite the torrential rains. They appointed representatives from each clan. These were entrusted with making a careful, thorough investigation of all the families in their clan. The mercy of God is seen in the remarkable unity with which all the people agreed with Ezra in acknowledging their transgression, in mourning their sin along with him, and in their agreeing to do whatever was necessary to set themselves right with God. Only 4 held out against this decision, 4 whose names are recorded for all time. This recalls the names of the 10 spies who were faithless to God and discouraged the people from moving forward in God's will. The investigation took place over 3 months, by which time they had determined which of the foreign wives had remained pagan. The records at the end of the chapter reveal that about 114 of these wives were unwilling to forsake their gods. This means that most of them chose to embrace the God of Israel and were accepted into the covenant community. This was not, therefore, an episode of racism, but a question of living in faithfulness to God. What can we learn from this painful episode? First, let us remember that our faithfulness to God matters. Our relationship with God is a covenant going deeper than the marriage covenant. As people of the covenant founded on the blood of Christ, we have been forgiven our earlier unfaithfulness and disobedience, but only at a great price. When we are faithless, we are not just hurting ourselves, we are violating our commitment to the ever-faithful one and trampling the blood of Christ underfoot. We must take this matter with utmost seriousness, for as Hebrews 12:29 reminds us, our God is a consuming fire. We cannot deliberately disobey his commands and still profess to be faithful in our devotion to him. Faithlessness has serious consequences. It threatened Israel with the fierce anger of God. For some, it cost them their families. The businessman who lost everything because of his compromise is just one example among many. When we violate our covenants, whether with God or with our spouses, we set ourselves on a path that leads to loss, pain, and regret. When faithlessness is recognized, the only honest response is godly sorrow, which leads to repentance. True repentance is known by the wholesome action that results from it. When David was confronted by Nathan about his sin, he did not make excuses. Knowing that under the divine law he deserved death, he accepted his guilt and his punishment with repentance. Likewise, the Israelites demonstrated their sincerity by taking radical steps to correct their wrongs. Repentance is not just feeling sorry. It is turning away from sin, no matter the cost. It is important to note that Ezra 10 is not a justification for divorce today. In the New Testament, believers are instructed to marry within the faith. I read in 2 Corinthians 6:14 and 1 Corinthians 7:39. However, if anyone became a believer while already married to an unbeliever, Paul instructs them to remain in the marriage, if possible, for the sake of witnessing to their spouse and the spiritual well-being of their children. 1 Corinthians 7:12-17. In contrast, The Israelites here were already in covenant with God, a covenant based first of all on loyalty to Him in exclusion of all other so called gods. They had violated it by marrying wives who did not share their devotion to the Lord. Thus, the historical event in Ezra was a unique situation tied to Israel's covenant and should not be used as a general principle for dissolving marriages. Let us be vigilant in guarding our hearts against faithlessness to God. No human desire or ambition can compete with our covenant faithfulness to Him, and nothing can justify disobedience to Him. Let us be equally careful to walk faithfully, whether within the covenant of marriage or in other commitments. The cost of faithlessness is too high. In contrast, the reward of faithfulness is eternal. God bless.